what was rightfully his. And in the process, what was taught is something unique, and this is something we really need to spend a moment to explain. And that is that as the wars took place, like the first war, there were people who were taken captive. In today's world, these would be known as enemy combatants, and they would be thrown into a kennel-like cage and perhaps tied down in a very awkward position and made to lay there for eternity perhaps, or indefinitely, no one knows when or how. And these were people who were considered, or who are considered, absolute enemies, who are to be condemned for life and so on. Islam says no, that's not what should happen. No ways, that is inhumane. These are human beings. Yes, they are captives, they are sentenced to life imprisonment, correct. Yes, because of what they have just been doing, because they have come with the intention of killing you. So they are sentenced to life imprisonment, but we do not have the prisons, number one, and we do not want, and I'm talking about what happened at the time of Muhammad, peace be upon him, we do not want these people to live in a cage or in a kennel. We don't want to tie them up. They are human beings. We need to acknowledge that they are human beings. So we will give them away. We will give them away to a certain individual or to a family, and they will have to live with that family for the rest of their lives. But there is a great chance of them being freed as well. And I'll explain that in a few moments. So they will have to live with this family or with this individual for the rest of their lives. They will be clothed with the clothing that the family clothes themselves with, that is by right. They will be fed with similar food that that family eats, that is their right. And at the same time, they will work for the family, but not to be burdened with that which they cannot do. And they will not have a payment for what they work for. And this was the way prisoners were treated. It may have been called enslaving and so on, but if you look at it carefully, it was people who were taken captive. In most instances, like I said, they were set free, and they were asked, like at the Battle of Badr, they were asked, if anyone from amongst you who has now been sentenced to life imprisonment, meaning they have been caught as captives, prisoners of war, if you are prepared to teach any one of the children here or the adults how to read and write, if you are to benefit humanity in some way that we appreciate, we will let you free. And so many were let free as they taught the children and some of the adults how to read and write. They were let free. So they bought their freedom. And a lot of them then accepted Islam because they came to interact with the Muslims. Now, the others who were perhaps, like I say, the term used might have been enslaved. But in actual fact, if you look at what Islam did, it gave them the higher of the respect of a human being. They were living with a family, they had food similar to that family, clothing similar to the family, and any time the person who was responsible for them or a family member committed a sin, the first line to achieve forgiveness was known as itqu raqaba, free that slave who is under your guardianship, or the person who is under you, free them. Then only you will be able to achieve forgiveness for the sin that was totally unrelated perhaps, like a person who did not fast during one of the days of Ramadan, for example, and he ate intentionally. That person would only be forgiven if one of the things they did is to free a slave and so on. The same applies to a person who broke his promise, an oath. If you broke an oath, the first line would be to free a slave. And this is what Islam brought. And it was so humane that all of them were freed. So much so that if, for example, a slave had come and wanted to buy his own freedom, it was encouraged in Islam. It is known as al-mukatab, a person who comes and strikes a deal with you to say, look, let me go out and work and earn something and I'll pay you back and so on. So it's like a fine that is being paid. They pay a fine. Why? Because they are prisoners and they are paying something in order for them to be released. Whereas if you look at how barbaric we've become today, we will throw people into a little kennel, we will tie them, we will treat them worse than dogs, and at the same time call it the new way of treating these people who are perhaps what we might term dangerous in our own language. Islam says no matter how dangerous a person is, he's a human being, treat him like a human being.